Hello and welcome to the British Chamber of Commerce Singapore's podcast channel. We're thrilled to present in-depth discussions on business, global affairs and news across Singapore, ASEAN and the United Kingdom. Thank you for your continued support and we hope you enjoy this episode. Hello and welcome to the British Chamber of Commerce Singapore's podcast channel. My name's David Kelly, I'm the Executive Director here at the British Chamber of Commerce and I'm currently in London, sat with the Right Honourable Ian Murray, Secretary of State for Scotland. Ian, thank you so much for your time today. I'm really pleased you've been able to squeeze us in here and I'm so sorry I missed your trip to Scotland a couple of months ago. How was it?
Well, we did two things. We went out there as a new government, a new UK Labour government. We were the first cabinet minister to go since the election back in July, so that was the first main component of it. But the second one was to launch Brand Scotland. So one of the four key priorities we have now as a Scotland office, one being economic growth, second being the green transition and energy, the fourth being poverty, but the third one's about Brand Scotland. And that's essentially saying that we've spent the last decade and a half trying to sell the wonderful things about Scotland to the Scots. But actually the biggest thing we can do for jobs and growth in Scotland is to sell Scotland to the rest of the world, and that was the key component of us launching Brand Scotland in Singapore. Brilliant.
And so running around in the Chamber, I'm really conscious that sometimes when people think of the UK, they think of Big Ben and Elizabeth Tower and the Houses of Parliament. But actually, there's amazing industry in other parts of the United Kingdom as well, and specifically Scotland. I mean, the education programmes are really strong. There's lots of innovation coming out of the universities. There's a huge energy transition piece, as you've mentioned. AIs, there's a big push there, and also around life sciences as well. So what's sort of Scotland got to offer for the rest of the world?
Well, one of the really interesting things that came from the trip, yes, we can talk about trade, yes, we can talk about businesses, yes, we can talk about all the things we have to offer. But one of the key things that struck me the most is there was not a senior person in business or in politics or in institutions in Singapore, or even Singapore being the gateway to the region, so we were in Malaysia as well, that hadn't had either direct or indirect connection with the education system, either in Scotland or across the UK. And that kind of soft power but understanding, given that sort of subconscious bias towards the UK, is a really powerful foundation I don't think we've made enough of. And that then allows you to then have that understanding that takes you as the door opener to other things. So we talk about in the Scottish context food and drink. I don't want Scotland just to play a key part of the green energy revolution across the world. I want it to win it, and it's in a key place to win it. In terms of its natural resources, but also the investment the governments are putting in to make sure it happens. And then you've got tech, you've got AI, you've got advanced manufacturing, life sciences, and our new industrial strategy, and the 8 key sectors that will promote are very much the 8 key sectors of the Scottish economy, but also of what we can sell to the world. And I know Singapore are very interested in a lot of those key sectors.
Can we talk tech and AI? What's coming out of Scotland that's really exciting?
Well, I use this a lot. I'm an alumni of Edinburgh University, so I know this intimately. But University of Edinburgh has had an AI institute since 1963. So whilst everyone thinks that AI is very much a new concept, and of course the development it is, that world-leading research and development happens in Edinburgh, and of course the UK and Scotland play a key role in leading that AI revolution across the world. I think we're second in the world, certainly first in Europe in terms of that AI capacity and that research and development. So that's a key thing in terms of that technology that other parts of the world are looking at. When I went to Singapore, actually, and we touched on this just before the cabinet started to roll, I thought I would go out there and Singapore would sell Singapore to me. Yeah. But actually, what I found was that there was a bit of that, but what they wanted to do was for me to sell Scotland to them, because they want to see the AI and tech. They want to make sure they can glean the knowledge of green energy and technologies and life sciences, and not only get the knowledge in Singapore, but actually encourage startups and fledgling companies to go and base themselves and use the facilities and the framework of AI to not just develop across the world, but be the gateway to the region. And I thought that was really fascinating that they were looking to Scotland and the UK as the world leaders in a lot of these sectors.
I'm quite lucky that we work with the likes of Strathclyde University, Glasgow University. There's a huge alumni network in Singapore from the Scottish universities as well. There's a lot of innovation that comes out of the education system. That must be a really great opportunity to sort of take some of the great minds, the great thinking, the great opportunity to innovate through the Scottish universities, but also to to try and use those as a bit of an export opportunity, like you say, as a way of building great partnerships.
Absolutely, and we did a round table with the higher education institutions from Scotland that are actually based in Singapore.
Okay.
And the collaboration that they are doing with their counterparts in Singapore is huge, and that's really the way you're going to develop these technologies for the future, is by using each other's mutual strengths, with Singapore's strengths in the sort of hard end of the technology with the semiconductors and those kinds of issues, and working together with that collaboration, because the key thing here isn't necessarily about the sectors, but it's about people.
Yeah.
And having that, not just that people exchange, but that knowledge exchange, being able to exploit each other's strengths and weaknesses, and being able to work together to try and exploit the technologies is really key. So I came away from Singapore thinking that this is yes, it's an opportunity for trade, yes, it's an opportunity for advancing the things that we do well and the things that Singapore does well, but actually it's a way of advancing that people-to-people relationship, which is going to be key to developing those industries.
Oh, great stuff. Can we talk about the North Sea energy transition? And sometimes might be a bit of a contentious topic in terms of the oil and gas sector, which is strong in Scotland. But so what's sort of happening in terms of that energy transition piece, and what do you think is going to sort of come up?
Well, the whole world's transitioning, and the North Sea basin in terms of fossil fuels and oil and gas is an ageing basin, it's a diminishing basin, and it's a very expensive basin to be able to exploit those resources. I mean, oil and gas will be with us coming out of the North Sea for decades to come, there is no doubt about that. But the key thing for government is to make sure that we can do that transition properly for the people as well as the technology. So the new UK government's, one of the UK government's 5 national missions is to get to clean power by 2030. Scotland plays a fundamental role in that, from knowledge base but also in terms of natural resources. And the key is to make sure we have the infrastructure to be able to do that. So the whole world's looking at Scotland at the moment in terms of offshore floating wind, those kinds of fledgling technologies, including places in the world that you would think would be at the cutting edge of this and trying to learn from them. So in Norway, for example, they're looking to Scotland as the world leaders in this technology. So given the energy challenges across the whole of the world, and given the future in terms of that transition, that's why I say that Scotland needs to win this race rather than just be part of it, because we have the technology, we have the skills and the expertise from the oil and gas sector, which are the same skills and expertise, and we have the national mission from government to try and pump prime that and give the confidence to the markets to come and invest in Scotland, invest in the technologies, and then use that investment back home where you might want those technologies to be deployed.
Brilliant. And we talked about sort of the bilateral partnership rather than just exporting, just selling, actually building really meaningful partnerships. We're quite lucky in Singapore because we've got a 10-year strategic plan, the SG UK strategic partnership. We've got a digital economy agreement. We've got a green economy framework in place. And the UK's recently joined the CPTPP, of which Singapore's a key market, but also there's other countries in the CPTPP, like Malaysia, for example, which the UK's not had a free trade agreement with before. That must present an opportunity for Scottish businesses looking to export to Southeast Asia, but also to build sort of meaningful partnerships too.
Absolutely, and the key thing for me as a Scotland office is not necessarily the facts and figures that come out of CPTPP in terms of trade and increasing trade. It's actually the signal it sends out to our partners across the world that we're serious about trading properly, we're serious about innovating and collaborating, and the CPTPP sent out that very strong signal that we want to work together across the whole of the world. The fallout, if you like, from Brexit and leaving the European Union was that the UK had become a very isolationist country, that it wasn't looking to the world but it was looking inwards, and I think signing things like the CPTPP changed that and changed the direction of that and show that we are internationalists, we want to work in collaboration with our international partners, and we want to exploit the historic relationships that we have around the world, of which Singapore and indeed Malaysia are key.
And bringing it to the sort of the domestic market, what is the industrial strategy going to do for businesses in Scotland, do you think?
Well, we've not really had an industrial strategy for over a decade in the UK and indeed in Scotland, so it will do a number of things. It will back the things that we do well and exploit the things that we do well. It will give a direction of travel to markets that actually what we do well is being backed by government. It will mean that we can align other parts of government to the industrial strategy, whether that be skills and training, economic and incentives, making sure that we have an environment across the whole of government horizontally that we're backing these industries. And ultimately for me it's about jobs and local communities, it's about regeneration. And the industrial strategy is a number of things, but particularly in the green energy type scenario, most of the jobs and economic development and industrial advancement of those kinds of jobs and areas will be in the places that haven't had it before. So it's almost to a certain extent about reindustrialisation or green reindustrialisation. So that's what the industrial strategy would do. It's a really exciting document. Business is really excited about it, and they've been at the forefront of developing it. And it's also a document we can take to our international partners in places like Singapore and say, look, this is what we're doing as a country, this is what you're doing, how do we join these together for the benefit of both our economies and jobs in our local countries. And the one thing about some of the bilateral agreements we have with Singapore, like the technology bridge, it's there, and I think the challenge for both Singapore and for the UK as governments but also as industries is to try and make sure that we have these documents but we enact them and we use them. And that's the challenge.
Brilliant. We work very closely in Singapore with the likes of Scottish Development International, with the Department of Business and Trade more broadly. What would your advice be to businesses in Scotland that are thinking about expanding their market to Southeast Asia or the Asia-Pacific region?
Well, three things. A, do it. B, use the Scotland Office and government to help you do it. And thirdly, be confident about what we have to offer. Most other countries in the world puff out their chests and wave their flags and are quite bombastic. I think as Brits and Scots were slightly more bashful. And my readings from being in places like Singapore on the Brand Scotland Trade Mission is essentially people want investable propositions. And I use this sort of analogy a lot, but I got the impression there was an awful lot of institutions and investors from Singapore that were sitting with checkbooks and pens, but they just wanted to know what they were investing in and what were the investable propositions. So my message to businesses in Scotland would be, take the support, get the support, prioritise it, and then get out there and do it, because there'll be a lot of support there to do it, and actually you're pushing out an open door. Fantastic.
Secretary of State, it's been such a pleasure to sit down with you and talk to you about the opportunity for Scottish business, and we stand ready to support as well. But there is one question we ask on the podcast channel to everybody, which is, if we could manufacture through the brilliance of Scottish innovation a time machine and take you back to some point in your career with everything you've learnt today, and you could give yourself some advice, when would you take yourself back to a former you, a younger you, and what advice would you give yourself?
Oh my goodness, these are the questions that politicians hate. I would probably transport myself back to early part of university and make the decision to travel more while I had the opportunity to do so, because actually the kind of thing that Brand Scotland's doing is allowing us not just to sell Scotland to the rest of the world and to increase trade and inward investment, but actually you learn so much more on the ground working with partners and international partners. And I would have thought that if I was to give my younger self more advice, I'd get myself more internationally streetwise in advance of going into the world of work, and particularly the world of politics. Brilliant.
I know you've got a really busy agenda, so I just want to say thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me in, and look forward to seeing you in Singapore soon with your team.
Well, I'll take that as an open invite, and we'll see you very soon.
100%. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the British Chamber of Commerce Singapore's podcast channel. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a rating and review on Spotify, Apple, Google, and other podcast platforms. If you enjoyed this episode, please spread the word by sharing it across your network. For more information about the Chamber and what we do, visit our website at www.britcham.org.sg and tune in next time for a brand new episode.